Ciao, my loves. Welcome to Drawing Down the Stars. This is Gemma. And in this episode number 21, we are going to dive into Swara Yoga. Now, this will be a 3-part series because I really want you to get all of the juicy bits of Swara Yoga. It is a tantric art, a tantric practice that connects the cosmos to the biorhythms of the body and elevates the aspirant or the yogi into higher states of being. It is a beautiful and such a simple yet profound practice and system. So that's another reason why I really want to break it down into 3 sets so you can take everything from it, and so it's a little bit more digestible. So in this first part, today's episode, we'll be covering the connection between the cosmos and the biorhythms, the mind and the body, and really the precipice of how we can connect the higher intelligence that operates behind our sun and our moon and our world to the exact same intelligence that is operating within us. And then in part 2, we'll go even deeper into the subtle body, really unfolding the energy body, moving into the nadis or the channels and understanding the different planes and how they are affecting our physical world, but also really some of the energetic components and kind of get a bit quantum, if you will. And in the third and final part, of course, we'll take it all together and bring it into one beautiful episode on how you can apply it and how you can use it not only in your spiritual practice, but how Swara is applicable in the day-to-day life. All right, so let's dive in, shall we? As you've probably already discerned and I've mentioned, Swara Yoga is a tantric practice. It is a tantric art that is based in prana shakti. Prana shakti means life force, energy, but it's connection to breath, right? So prana is not breath, but breath is the vehicle in which we can access life force, or we can access the conduit that connects us to higher qualities of life force energy. Swara comes from the ancient text Shiva Swara Daya. Now, this is a tantric text, and I'll include that text in the notes below so you have all the resources you need if you want to dive deeper. But the purpose of Swara Yoga is from a very simplistic standpoint, from a very sub-level. It is the connection of the moon and the sun to the biorhythms of the body. So how the sun controls the biorhythms of the body, but more importantly, how the moon is the governor of our breath cycles, which i.e. control specific channels and hemispheres of the brain. So we're going to go deeper into that. But Swara is not just about the sun and the moon controlling the breath and the hemispheres of the brain, because that's pretty basic, right? It's far more than that. It really is about elevating the aspirant and understanding the subtle body or the life force energy that is operating behind the scenes. And in that, it unfolds the aspirant to understand life force energy, prana, shakti, and how it animates all of life. This breathing, this inhale, exhale, this expansion and contraction, and it even goes deeper. It allows us to see the imprints or the subtle nature, the shapes, the colors, the frequency. It's all energy. And so we understand what is flowing through us and around us so we can better be in tune and work with it. It's only when you understand the power that moves through you and that is operating around you that you're really able to wield that. You're not blindly moving through. So Swara on a very deeper level is to elevate the aspirant, the yogi, into a higher state of consciousness and a higher state of being, to create a conduit and a strong connection of the understanding of how life force energy moves through you and how it is operating around you. Now, for Swara is to control the activities of the brain and the nervous system. According to Swara, that's the key. When we understand that breath gives greater insight into the body and mind, we understand prana shakti. Now, according to Swara texts, the analysis of breath provides an understanding of the cosmos and the wisdom that is revealed within the Vedas. This is really commonly echoed. It's echoed in the Bible. It's also, the Taoists say, if one meditates upon the breath, the cosmic deities or forces can be seen operating in the physical body. By sustaining oneself purely on breath rather than coarse food, one's entire being will be purified and strengthened. Then the conscious is able to ascend to the heavens where eternal life is experienced by the body and soul. Now, this is a quote from Taoism. So it's not just the yogic view. We get to see that this really is cross lineages, cross different belief systems. So now we know that Swara is uniquely connected to the breath. Swara Yoga enables us to understand the nature of breath and its influence on the body because the different Swaras lead to different types of action, mental, physical, and spiritual. So what are the very basics of breath and Swara? Well, Swara means flow. Nadi, channel, also kind of means flow. And Swara breaks things into our biorhythms. So in this first episode, let's dive into the breath, and we're going to understand how the physical body, or in yoga, we call Annamaya Kosha, the physical form, and the breath or the life force, sheath, is Pranamaya Kosha. So here we have the dense, gross physical form and the subtle connection of prana, which is very much the conduit of through the breath. Now, the way Swara works, and for those yogis out there, you're very familiar with the sun and moon, or what is hatha, the masculine and feminine, the positive and the negative. This is even in the Kabbalah. This is very common across all lineages, again, of the positive and negative force, even in science. Positive, negative, neutral. We have 3 forces of energy. This is Swara. We're going to operate within the prana, the life force energy, prana Shakti, and really break down the Shiva and Shakti, the pure consciousness and the pure energy power, or the masculine and the feminine, or the yin and the yang. In Ayurveda, we call it Prakriti and Purusha, or Purusha and Prakriti, consciousness and the embodiment or the energy. So Swara Yoga essentially is understanding how the moon will control our breath and our body rhythms. It's incredible. And none of this is like just philosophical or theory. You can really put this into action. You can test it. And I hope you do. I really hope that you tune into your nostril dominance and really tap in and notice what's operating, because then why listen to this episode? No, use it. Play with it, practice it, start to feel the wonder of how our body is so intricately connected to the moon beyond what you've even imagined. So at sunrise, a nostril dominance will begin. The left nostril is called Ida. This channel is one of the primary channels in Tantra, and it represents the feminine or the negative channel, the void, essentially. The right channel, Pingala, the masculine, the active, the enlivening channel, is a secondary channel. And then the third channel is Sushumna, or the central channel, the space and place where both the masculine and feminine come together and unite or become neutral. The right channel, the masculine channel, Pingala, is responsible for all of the activating energy. It is a activation, and it has exact same premise within the brain. The left channel, Ida, the feminine nature, has the same qualities in the world around us and, of course, into the brain. It will elicit this soothing, this nourishing, but this energy of creation, energy of drawing in, right? And then the central channel is the channel of spiritualization, of spiritualizing, Sushumna. It is our conduit directly into source. And it operates into a higher state or plane of being. And when we enter into, when majority of our life force energy enters into the central channel, Sushumna, it is said that we are ascended. We're no longer really bound to the karmas, and it becomes somewhat in the state of the mind where the mind is balanced, it's equal, it's not in the interplay of either creating or doing, but in being. The optimization or the goal, whether it be in Kundalini or in other practices, whatever the lineage may be, is to come into that union or operate more in the source of being neutralized. And that sounds bad because we're in an active world, we're in this physical form, but not neutralized, but to have such a strengthening of your conduit to source that when you are operating either in the left, the feminine, or the right, the masculine, it is from the premise of a higher state of consciousness. And this is where Swara is so amazing. So let's dive into the moon and how it controls this. So as I mentioned, the sunrise will actually activate. It's an activating energy. It's solar energy. It moves us, right? It wakes up our world. It too turns on a dominant nostril. So at the moment of sunrise, based on your geolocation, whatever time that will be, the nostril's dominance is determined by the moon. So new moon begins the cycle. When the new moon starts, the left nostril, Ida, feminine, will become active. And that will stay active for 3 days. For the next 3 days at sunrise, left nostril turns on. The next 3 days, the right nostril turns on. So we have a direct correlation to nostril dominance based on what we call the fortnight, or the waxing. So the new moon to the full moon, and then another cycle that begins from full moon to new moon, so the waning cycle. So they are 2 cycles divided. And within those 2 cycles, we go more micro, right? So new moon begins the left nostril for 3 days. At sunrise, left nostril starts, left nostril starts, left nostril starts. And then the next 3 days, right nostril begins at sunrise, right nostril begins at sunrise. And it alternates like that every 3 days. And I'm talking about lunar days, or in the Vedic system, we call tithis. Lunar days, okay, not solar days. Even though the sun activates it, they are lunar days. This is in Swara, the moon is the governor. The sun is just the activator. I don't want to say it's a passive role, but it is less of a predominant role. Let's say that. Now, we don't say left nostril dominant the entire day. Because imagine, the left nostril actually controls the right hemisphere of the brain. It's this crisscross. And if you're familiar with Kundalini, or even seeing the images of the channels or the intertwining snake going up the caudus, going up the central channel, right? So almost like a helix, like a DNA helix, this intertwining, this crisscross at chakras, at wheel centers. We'll get into that in the second episode. Don't worry. But the left nostril activates the right hemisphere of the brain. So there's a crisscross that occurs, and the right nostril activates the left hemisphere of the brain. Well, you're like, well, what is the right hemisphere of the brain responsible for? Coincidentally and oddly, it is actually responsible for rest and relaxation, meditation. It's great for introspection. It's great for sleep. Versus the left hemisphere of the brain is more analytical. It's more active. It is more mathematical. So we have our right hemisphere that is creative, and then we have the left hemisphere that is analytical. So the opposite nostril, the brain hemisphere and the nostril are in opposite. They are in mirror form. Quite amazing if you think about it. Mirrored. Okay. Now, so the nostril dominance, it would be really odd if it was the new moon and for the next 3 days, we were only moving through the right brain, right? Because the left nostril is dominant. So we're only in a creative form all day, every day. No. Can you imagine how imbalanced that would be? For some of you, you're like, yes, please give me nothing but meditative brain for 3 days. And then the next 3 days or whatnot. No, it alternates every 60 minutes. So you should try this. Test it. Please do. At sunrise, on the new moon, left nostril will become dominant. And then in 60 minutes, the right nostril will become dominant. Now, don't fret if you notice that the left nostril is still dominant after 60 minutes, because some bodies, every body, is a little bit different. So it's not exactly 60 minutes for some of you, yes. But for others, it'll be 120 minutes. It'll be 90 minutes or an hour and a half. So check your rhythms, but it alternates. So left will begin our nostril dominance, synchronized with the new moon, really beginning with that sunrise. The feminine energy is going to predominate. And then it'll move over to the masculine. So we have this dance that is moving between nostrils and brain hemispheres throughout the day. Left nostril dominant at new moon at sunrise, then right nostril will dominate and alternate for the next 60 minutes to 90 minutes, and then vice versa. They just keep going back and forth. And we're going to tap into this in episode 3, but now you can imagine, now you're understanding the brain chemistry that is working through the nostrils, or prana shakti, life force that is actually changing the biorhythms of your body according to the phase of the moon. Amatsa, no? Crazy, amazing. Okay. So we have this alternate energy and it's literally synchronized with this moon. Now we have this intelligence in operation that we had no idea. Well, some of you did. The beauty of this is that's where the yogis say tune in. Because when you tune in and you start to understand, all right, well, my right nostril is dominant right now. It's probably best that I go meditate. Because it literally, the brain hemisphere dominance, according to the nostril dominance, will change the biorhythm of the body. It will change how you act, maneuver, see, and throughout the world. You're alternating between masculine and feminine. It is the dance between positive and negative. And then equally, you can't be super analytical if the feminine is active, right? If the left hemisphere is active, analysis, linear thinking, attack, do, plan, masculine forces are at play. Hone it in. We'll talk about how to switch nostril dominance in the next episode. But remember, I mentioned we have 3 channels. It's not just right and left, Pingala and Ida, feminine and masculine. We have a central channel that is neutral, just like we have protons, electrons, and neutrons. We have positive, negative, and neutral charges. Neutral channel, Sushumna, will be the channel where in between the alternating forces of right and left, and between the right and left hemispheres of the brain, there is a period of time where the life force energy, prana shakti, moves into the central channel. This is said to be, that's when you are tapped in, tuned on, just in connection with source. When life force energy operates within the central channel, meditate. It opens up your world not from the egoic being, the individuated, but into the source being. And that is really the purpose of yoga, right? To connect us into source so we can understand our truth. And here is where Swara comes in. Yes, we are tuned into the prana shakti and the energy that is operating around us. But more importantly, it will elevate the aspirant and the yogi into a higher state of consciousness. So when we take control of our breath, i.e. pranayama, do specific breathwork practices, we are working on a quantum level of increasing prana shakti and improving its quality. So quantity and quality, breath retention, breath work, breath practices increase the quality and nature of your prana shakti. The more we are working with that, the more we can control and expand or lengthen the duration that prana shakti moves into the central channel. Again, we are working with life force energy. When we switch on and start to work with these forces, we are no longer in a passive state of how they activate us. We're more in a cooperative state. And when we're in this cooperative state with prana shakti, what we are really truly opening up to, remember I quoted that Taoist, is we are opening up to cosmic prana. Not everything is individuated prana. When I'm talking about I'm receiving this pranic energy and it is moving in my physical form and my subtle body, this is the amount of energy that is flowing through the individuated body, which can be limited. However, when I do prana practices or I tune into Swara Yoga and I start to work with these higher practices, I am now expanding beyond just my individual source of life force energy. And you know this, we've all experienced it when you're like, go, 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 whether it's mentally a taxing day or a physically taxing day, your cup gets emptied because you're functioning solely on this individuated life force. When you eat poor food, that prana is very limited. And so you're not refilling your life force energy. And so we run out of this source of invigoration, of vitalizing energy. But when we tune into cosmic prana, now we're the vessel. We're not just running on our own gas. We're running on the infinite source that fuels us. the infinite, not the finite. And this is really where prana yoga will elevate the individual. You're starting to work and cooperate with life force energy that operates all of life. So now you're not functioning solely from individuated. You're now moving into cosmic. You've expanded to understand how life force operates. So your mind expands, your consciousness expands, and your physical state of being, that vitality, is heightened. Some people like to call it frequency, which it is. We can tune into any form of energy and it will have a sound. Also color and light, right? That's what color is. It's just a photon of light. But when you're able to tap in, and what you're experiencing is this expansion. So let's move back to the brain. I'll put all of this in the resource notes because I know it's a lot to kind of keep straight, especially when I'm talking about a mirroring between the left nostril activating the right brain and vice versa. It's like, whoa, mucho te crece, right? So I'll put it in the notes, okay? But again, just to recap before we dive into the hemispheres of the brain and move deeper into the spiritual aspect, the nostril dominance is directly connected to the waxing and waning cycle of the moon. Alternating nostril dominance every fortnight. So every waning to waxing cycle, new moon to full moon, there are 9 nights of right nostril dominance, okay? And 3 cycles of 3 days dominance, and then 6 cycles of left nostril dominance. This is an alternate. And then again from waning, right, to waxing. So the full moon to the new moon. The sun activates the nostril dominance at sunrise, but the moon determines which nostril operates, which nostril will be dominant. The nostril dominance is the gateway to cosmic prana. It is the gateway to the mind-body connection. As the dominant nostril controls the brain hemisphere, the dominant hemisphere, so too emotion, the chemical body, and the nervous system are controlled and regulated. So now we have this, and the phase of the moon is simply mirroring the position to the sun, the relevance to the soul, right? That life source. So each hemisphere is associated with the arousal of different emotions. Right hemisphere is actually correlated to sad, and left hemisphere is correlated to happy. I don't want to say sad. Oh, that sounds awful, but maybe a more introspective, an inward energy. I hate when we correlate negative and positive, good and bad, because it's not it, right? It's a magnetism or a retraction or an expansion. Let's think of it that way. But it has been observed that specific emotional stimuli are activated by specific hemispheres of the brain. And they arouse this arousal of these hemispheres of the brain, i.e. the nostril dominance, has an inverse relationship. It's the cross. It is how we actually are moving between aggressive response, a fight reaction when the masculine nature is active, versus where we have the withdrawal, a passive participant, right? The energy rhythms of the body are directly connected to the biorhythms, which are directly connected to the brain hemispheres, which are directly connected to the lunar cycle, the moon cycle, and the time. So we know this as the electromagnetic fields within the body. Electric is masculine, magnetic is feminine. Together we have the electromagnetic fields. Swara Yoga is this ancient science of the pranic body, and it unites this. It unites the cosmic life force just through your breath. Now, from the individuated, you ascend to the cosmic, and you understand the cosmic through the individuated. Now, Swara connects us to the higher levels of consciousness. Again, this is key. The primary methods of Swara is revealing the intelligence of energy within consciousness and the interconnectedness between universal prana or cosmic prana, life force, and the individual. It will elevate consciousness through the mind and its ability to work with prana, shakti, vital life force energy. In the human body, we have 3 Swaras, 3 channels, as I had mentioned. The left Swara presides over mental actions, and we call this Chitta or Manas Shakti, and the right Swara over physical actions. We call this Prana Shakti. Now the central channel, Sushumna, is called Atma Shakti. Atma, soul energy, soul. In the human body, these three svaras correspond to the three major systems. We also know this spiritually as the Trinity. Mind is one aspect, life force and spirit combined and constitute the human body. So in Swara Yoga, it's not just, oh, hey, neat, I'm connected to the sun and moon. Yeah, listen, we all know this. However, in Swara Yoga is understand it on such a deeper level and transcend it. That's where it is, because it will open the mind. And when you tap into the cosmic life force, you're actually working with this energy around you. You can see what is also operating in its masculine and feminine. And then we're going to really get into it. You can see the elements, the qualities. I know some of you are like, what? Get out of here. No, justo. Like really. You have an ability to just practice on your own, and you can test it. It is a science. It is a sacred science. It is not theory. You can go home. You can do it right now. The mind and chitta, this life force activation, and spirit and prana, chitta controls our sensory nerves, the eyes, the nose, the tongue, the ears, the skin. Prana Shakti controls the 5 organs of action. For all of my Ayurvedic lovers out there, you know what I'm talking about. We talk about the karmas of the sense organs. So Prana Shakti controls the 5 organs of action: speech, hands, feet, reproductive, like urinary and excretory organs. Atma, the soul energy, is the overall witness and controller. So when the left nostril flows, it indicates that the mental energy, chitta, is predominant. The activation of the mind, also the referencing to past karmas. Remember, it's a linear analytical. It's going to take the past, analyze, move it forward, okay? And when that chitta shakti is active, then prana shakti, life force energy, the feminine, is not weak, but in a supportive role. And when the right nostril flows, prana energy is a little bit more active, stronger. The mental aspect then becomes weak, and we have more expression in the creative nature, in the fluidity, the non-linear thinking. But when both operate together, we're in the central channel, and this indicates that the spiritual energy or the life force of the soul is now in power. However, this is such a minute time. For some of you, it's a few seconds, 4 to 30 unconsciously. For the yogi, the aspirant that is continually practicing it, it can be up to 4 minutes. Oh, the goal to hit 4 minutes. Imagine being in a connective source that magnifies everything for 4 minutes. That's the goal. That's the ascension. That's the gateway into moving, hopefully, into the higher states of the koshas, or the planes of the subtle body. Vijnana Maya Kosha, Ananda Maya Kosha, the bliss body. All right, so slowly, I'm wrapping this up. All right, again, in the notes, I'm going to put down all of which is active, or you can also get the calendar, the lunar calendar and planner, and it will list the Swara Yoga dominance on the day, the lunar days, on the month view. Okay, so the Pingala pathway is a transmitter of prana shakti. It's the positive channel known as the Surya, or the sun, or the solar channel, and it's invigorating. Pingala activates the body and externalizes awareness. Let me reiterate that. It activates the body and externalizes awareness. We are in the go mode, the do mode, the witness what's around and how do I react to it mode. It's associated with the sympathetic nervous system, which releases adrenaline, right? And it stimulates the superficial muscles. Again, it is a very masculine outward charge, invigorate. The SNS, or the sympathetic nervous system, prepares the body to cope with stress and external activity. Pingala, masculine, is heating, it's extroverting, it's activating. You want this nostril, this brain hemisphere to be dominant when you're eating, when you're needing to attack the world, when you need to do things and get it done. Pingala is controlled through the right nostril, but works the left hemisphere of the brain. And it also operates the left side of the body. Again, left hemisphere of the brain responsible for rational, analytical, relational, mathematical ability. Information is processed sequentially. It motivates our responses to daily life. The Ida pathway, the feminine, is the transmitter of chitta, mind energy. It's a negative channel, a magnetic energy, an introspective and inward drawing that brings consciousness into every part of the body. So here we have the masculine that externalizes and activates. And here the feminine, when that nostril, the left nostril pathway is opened, we have it known and connected to Chandra, or the moon, the lunar nature, the cooling, the receptive. Ida is associated with the parasympathetic nervous system, and it sends impulses to the visceral organs to stimulate the internal processes. It creates a general state of relaxation in the superficial muscles, and it lowers the outer body temperature. It's cooling, it's relaxing, it's introverting. The left nostril activates Manas Shakti, or Chitta, the mental body. And it's how we see. It's the levels of consciousness that is correlated to this channel. It's the right hemisphere. Left nostril is the right hemisphere of the brain, which is responsible for creative, intuitive, artistic ability. Information is diffused in a more holistic manner. It's less analytical. It's more expansive in that nature. It controls orientation in space. And it's very sensitive to vibrations and experiences. It is more attuned to the intangible within the external sense receptors. It is responsible for psychic and extrasensory perception. So when we work with Swara, when we understand the nostril dominance, which correlates to the brain hemisphere, we understand the literal life force energy that is operating how we maneuver into the world, how we are vibrating, how we are reacting, how we are being. We understand it is not only an emotional, but a very physical correlation, and also a very chemical correlation right onto our nervous system. And we understand the spiritual connection. Now, when we're connecting these three channels, positive, negative, neutral, masculine, feminine, neutral, we're connecting cosmic life force to the individuated life force. This is where consciousness is revealed within matter. This is where operating intelligence within time and space are directly synchronized to the mind and the body. These are subtle forces that require subtle practices. And we'll dive deeper into this in the third part and the second part. But Swara is transforming the grosser forms through life force energy. It transforms the mind and the operation of that direction of mind and intention through that source energy. So we can confirm these through nostril dominance. You can check. But we'll dive deeper into this, into the second episode, where we'll talk a little bit more about the energy and the atoms and the particles, and a little bit more about the subtle bodies and the 7 planes of existence. But as I close this episode, tune in. Turn on your awareness. If you don't know which nostril is dominant, it's pretty simple. You plug up one nostril, let's say the left, and breathe into the right. If it feels pretty open, okay, and then plug up the right and breathe into the left. Which one feels more open? The more open nostril is dominant. And for those of you that have a deviated septum, don't worry. I have one too. I was born with it. It was a defect. But it still works. You can still tell which nostril dominance is active. And then you'll fine tune. Don't worry about it. You'll know which dominant nostril, which brain hemisphere is turned on. It's just about drawing your awareness to it. And then once you have started to figure out, okay, my left nostril dominant, my right nostril is dominant, find your duration. Do you alternate masculine, feminine, positive, negative? Are your channels, your brain hemispheres operating on a 60-minute cycle? Are you closer to a 90-minute cycle? That's then where you can start to tune in and be like, well, you know what? I got a presentation. I'm either going to turn on the right hemisphere of the brain through the left nostril. Actually, the right nostril and the left hemisphere of the brain, or am I going to switch it? So the purpose is here is understand your rhythm, then synchronize with it and make sure it is in sync with the forces. Now, I don't want to worry you because some people, my students especially, get a little worried when we practice this and they're like, oh my God, I'm not in synchronization. the yogic texts say that if your prana is that deranged, your vitality source is that deranged. But don't worry, pranayama is there. Breath work is there. It's just returning back into that rhythm, and it's very quick to happen, okay? So just tune in and figure out your duration, figure out the nostril dominance. You want to make sure the proper nostril is attuned with the moon cycle. Then the moon, you're starting to understand here that the moon is the governor of the body. And now you're going to understand how to work with the energy body. Aside from that, don't get too heady about it, because we're really going to break it down in part 2. And of course, this is such an in-depth text, and there's only so much that I can teach you in this truncated podcast. But I do have courses. You don't have to worry about it. And I will, as always, share everything I know and how to apply it as much as I can, because it is so important for me to teach you this beautiful art. And I hope that you fall in love with it just as much as I have. And I hope that it opens up your mind and your world to the subtle intricacies of life operating around us and how we are so intricately connected to it all. That means that you are not the only body and mind being effective. Yes, our animals are. The creatures big and small, but also the plants. The moon feeds all of life on Earth. So now you're able to work with all of the energies that are operating around you and within you. There is no separation. There is no segregation. We are one source, one energy, with infinite possibilities and infinite expressions, but all moving into the same rhythm, the same flow, the same intelligence. All right, my loves. Please check out the show notes below for further resources. And as always, Tanti Bachi, lots of kisses, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Ciao.